9-panel portraits like this have a lot of uses. It's like a one-image portfolio. I've got a nice sampling of all the different people I've had in front of my camera, and it's a quick way for people to look at a range of my work. And today I'm going to update it with a few of my favorite images from the last 12 months. If you want to make one of these too, you can follow along. You could get this done in Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop. You could get this done in PowerPoint if you really wanted to, but here I'm using Affinity Designer. So to get one of these started, we'll create a new file with an 8 by 10 inch canvas size. Each of the frames will be made of a simple rectangle. We'll just draw one out, and in the transform pane, we can give it a width of 1 inch and a height of 5.5 inches. We'll make sure that it has no fill. We'll leave it with a black border, so we'll give it a solid line with a width of around 0.7. So now it's a case of just selecting it, pressing Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V on the keyboard to make a copy. Just move that over, and we'll paste another one, and we'll move that over. It doesn't quite matter where they are for now. We'll copy the 3 of these, and then we'll paste that one more time so that we've got 9 of them. And now we can simply select them all, go to the alignment tool, and then we can space them horizontally. This will space them evenly, and then we can also align them to the top. I'm going to give it a Y location of 1 inch. Now, rather than have every image the same height, I'm going to introduce a rhythm to the panels by making some shorter than others and at different heights. So we'll start with the panel on the left and give it a height of 3.5. And then I'll go through this set and give them all slightly different heights. Then I'm going to simply change the Y distance for each one to stagger them up and down. And because this is going to be on my website homepage, I'm also going to have the word portraits over the image, because the entire image will also be a clickable link that will take you to the full portrait portfolio. So we'll add a text box with portraits written in it. And then I'm going to give that a Montserrat font with a size of around 36. And the color here, I'm going to go to the HSL sliders and give it a hue of 29, saturation of 100, and a lightness of 50. Now, because the text doesn't fit all the way across, I'm also going to go into the character pane and go onto the tracking tab. And here we'll use a bit of trial and error to spread the letters out so it fills that width. I'll try 200, maybe 400. That's a bit too much. Let's try 325. Fits it in, lovely. And before we include the images into these panels, I'm going to give all of these boxes and the text a little shadow to make them pop out 3-dimensionally. So if we select everything and go into the effects pane, we can go and give it an outer shadow. We'll give it a little radius of 1 pixel just to start, and then offset the shadow from the text in the boxes. Then increase the radius just a little bit and decrease the opacity just so that there's a hint of shadow, and that's looking good. If we go back to the layers pane, we can see all of the rectangles that we put in. These are the panels for the images, and then the text that says portraits right at the top. I've already selected my favorite images from recent work ready to put into the panels. First one we're going to put in is the musician with his piano. So we can drag and drop it from the image folder, and that puts it at the top of our layer panel. To hide it underneath the rectangular pane, it's a simple case of dragging and dropping the image into the rectangle. So now the image is nested within that rectangle object. If we unselect the image and try and select it again, the entire pane moves around. So I'm going to undo that, and the only way we can grab the image on its own is to go back to the layers pane and select the image directly. Now when we move it around, it moves behind the rectangle, and we can size it and move it to where we need it to be. I have another image here that I really like, and when I drag it in and put it underneath the second rectangle, I find that I can't quite fit it in a way that I'd like. So this goes to show that not every image is going to be appropriate for this sort of display. We're going to have to pick a different image for this box. And it's sad, but I've no doubts I will show that image somewhere else. So we can delete this image and then bring in another image that we can use instead. In this case, we have an artist. We'll drag that image into the rectangle, size it, maybe even rotate it a little bit to fit it in. in the best possible way. And we'll go ahead and do the same with the rest of these images, and I'll speed up the process so you don't have to sit through the entire thing in real time. Now, if any of the images aren't quite to your liking, you can still treat them within Affinity Designer. For example, we can go into this image of page. If we'd like to decrease the lightness, we can go into brightness and contrast and add that to this nest. It's a simple case of reducing the brightness in the panel and then collapsing it back in the layers panel. There's also the case of the floating hands in this particular image. I'm still debating whether I should keep them in there or disguise them, but it's a good opportunity to show how we can eliminate some distractions. We can make another rectangle here. This time we can fill it with a gradient that will go from black to black, but on one side we'll give it 0 opacity. And we'll also get rid of the stroke. We'll turn it 90 degrees and raise it above the hands. We can go back into the gradient to make sure the black goes higher. And then we'll nestle that masking rectangle above the image, but below the panel boundary. I think I kind of preferred it with the hands still in there. I'm going to lower the opacity so that the hands are still in there, but a little bit darker than they were before. And then it's less of a distraction. We can tinker with the images to our heart's content, but this is roughly how it'll end up. The sequencing of images from left to right is intentional. There's a rhythm to them. If we look at the eyes, we go on a roller coaster ride, up and down until we get to the end. I've also got the images on the right looking back left. So as you read the panel of portraits, those eyes are making you go back and read it all over again. It keeps you in there just a little bit longer. So from here, it's a case of exporting the image, and the shortcut for that in Affinity Designer is Shift, Control, Alt and S. I'll save this out as a JPEG, and then I'll embed it into my website's homepage. And if you've ever watched any of my YouTube videos all the way to the end, you'll know that I also use these panels as end screens to the videos. I hope you found this tutorial useful and that you'll go and experiment with making your own one image portfolio to show off your own work.